Hey everyone, it's Scott Hansen from NFL Red Zone reminding you to watch Sports Ballers, the podcast that gets you caught up on everything Washington sports and beyond.
Sports Ballers podcast. My name is Eric. I'm joined by Corey and Evan as always. I hope everybody had a good Memorial Day weekend. I know Corey and I did at Sean's wedding. Shout out to him. We'll certainly give him another shout out at the end of the show, but that's what we did. Evan, how was your weekend?
It was good. I took a little trip. Now that I'm fully vaccinated, I thought it would be a great time to hop on an airplane. So I went to Chicago to try to see the Orioles take on the White Sox, but Mother Nature had other ideas.
Hey, at least you got your Tim Anderson bobblehead and you got your money back, right?
Yes, and yes.
Then it was a success.
And you got to see the Cubbies at Wrigley.
Yes, I did.
Always
the Cubs rolled the Reds because it was nice to see another baseball team just be completely incompetent on the field. With the Reds, they were just messing up all the time.
And then you got to wear a tuxedo t-shirt and sweatpants to watch Sean's wedding virtually.
Yes, I did. Yeah, that was nice. Congratulations to Sean.
Sean and Julia.
And Julia, yes, because, happy for them.
Yes, indeed. So we'll start, as usual, when I'm hosting with the NBA, where NBA is in full swing. We actually started last week with the NBA.
We usually start with the association.
That's true. And now it's playoff time, so it's going to be a regular topic until we have a champion crowned. First round is still going on. Some series have resolved. Others are still finishing up. So we'll start in the Eastern Conference. Last night, the Brooklyn Nets eliminated the Boston Celtics, and they'll face the Bucks on Saturday. But actually, the majority of the news is coming from Boston now because Danny Ainge has retired as the president of basketball operations for the Celtics, and Brad Stevens has ascended to that position, leaving the Celtics head coaching position vacant. So Brad Stevens out as coach, now basically the GM. Danny Ainge retired, and they're looking for a new head coach. So it'd be interesting to see what the Celtics do. I think that this has been a sort of a what-if scenario for them because they had all these draft picks. They had the deal of the century when they fleeced the Nets back in 2013, when they traded Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce, a bunch of old guys, for 10 million first-round picks. And they turned those picks into Jason Tatum and DeMarcus Smart and to Jaylen Brown. And they pretty much didn't get where they wanted to go after that. They were hoping to be sort of a post-LeBron dynasty in the Eastern Conference, and that really hasn't happened for them because they never quite made the big move. Danny Ainge wasn't willing to swing for the fences. He wasn't willing to go put that extra piece in to get Kawhi Leonard or to get Anthony Davis or to get Jimmy Butler or to acquire Kevin Durant or any of the many options they had to get that star that could potentially put them over the top. They just didn't do it, and now they're left being eliminated by the Brooklyn Nets, the same team that they absolutely buried with that trade. And it's a little ironic that they were supposed to step on the head of the Nets to climb to the top, and then the Nets just came back almost a decade later and destroyed their window. I mean, it's over for them. They don't have a realistic championship window at this point, so they're sort of rebooting, and Ainge decided to hang it up. Brad Stevens apparently got burnt out with coaching, specifically in last year's bubble, and I think he just wants to not do that anymore, do something else in the NBA, so he's decided to move on to the front office.
I mean, that sort of underscores the importance of, when you're in your championship window, you got to really go for it. Looking at you, Baltimore Ravens, for example, because, if you try to focus too much on the future and ignore the present, like, you're just not going to win. You're just never going to win ever.
Yeah, at some point you've got to push the chips to the center of the table. It almost felt like
all of them.
It almost felt like Ainge was a little bit gun shy because he hits it out of the park with this trade. And then I guess he almost figured that the return on every trade should be that good. And so the idea of having a deal where it's not quite that sweet for you just didn't do it for him. And so he just was a little gun-shy and didn't pull the trigger on some big opportunities. And it's interesting because they were, quote-unquote, very close to getting Kawhi Leonard, who ended up going to the Toronto Raptors, and the Raptors won a championship. And then they were this close to getting Anthony Davis, and then Anthony Davis ended up going to the Lakers, and the Lakers ended up winning the championship. So you're sitting by watching superstars go to other teams that aren't you and win titles with those new teams, when the Celtics certainly had the infrastructure to build a championship team around a superstar. They just didn't quite have that superstar. Jason Tatum's not quite there yet. I don't know if he'll ever be like an Anthony Davis. He's certainly a deserving all-star, but they're still missing that dude on that team. And frankly, it seems like they're out of time. It doesn't look realistic that they're going to get that dude anytime in the near future. So it was time to, frankly, if Ainge didn't step away on his own, I think that the Celtics should have considered removing him by choice for them too. So we'll move on to the Wizards, who managed to avoid a sweep in Game 4 against the Philadelphia 76ers, mostly because Joel Embiid sustained a knee injury in the first quarter of the game. He took an awkward landing on a dunk attempt and sort of hyperextended his knee.
He's going to miss some time.
Yeah, he's listed as day-to-day. They're concerned about some type of meniscus tear in his knee, and they're not sure about the severity of it for how likely it is that he'll return and be able to avoid re-aggravating or exacerbating that injury. But the plan is obviously for him to return this postseason. I think the Sixers should still be able to get by the Wizards, win one of the next 3 games without Embiid, especially with 2 of them being at home. I think they probably win Game 5, and then they'll figure out what they need to do against presumably the Atlanta Hawks, who are up 3-1 on the Knicks. But I think that if Embiid's not a full go, their championship opportunity is gone, because he's their best player on their team. Without him being fully effective, they simply aren't going to have the scoring that they need to be able to keep up with the Nets or the Bucks or
maybe even the Hawks at that point.
Yeah, I mean, the Hawks are a high-flying team. They can put up a lot of points. I think that they're going to challenge the Sixers even if Embiid is healthy. So that series becomes a lot more interesting if Embiid can't go or isn't all there. But obviously we wish him the best. We don't want to see people hurt. We've got a lot of injuries going on in the playoffs right now as it is, and that's just one more that sort of ruins a contender if he's not able to get on the court and be effective.
With Embiid hurt, and assuming he isn't able to return within the next as many as 3 games, how negligible are the Wizards' chances to pull this series out and win 3 straight?
It's just such a tall order, because I think the Sixers are still better than the Wizards even without Embiid, because they've still got Ben Simmons, they've still got Tobias Harris, they've still got Seth Curry, they've still got Matisse
Ben Simmons,
Thybulle.
the guy who apparently I get as a January birthday, according to that one thing.
Well, yeah,
you
he can't
you
shoot.
told me I was screwed.
Well, you're screwed if he has to make a 3, but he's still a top flight defender. He's an effective transition scorer. He's a good player. He's just disappointing because it feels like the most fundamental aspect of basketball is shooting,
the ball in the net.
and he doesn't do that when he plays a position that kind of requires him to do that. He's a guard.
Yeah.
So that is a little bit irritating about him, and it's always going to hold him back. But nevertheless, the Wizards have too many holes. Defensively, they don't have a whole lot to slow down pretty much anyone on the Sixers. And the thing is, the Wizards were fortunate because Bradley Beal did not have a great game in Game 4. Russell Westbrook had an awful game shooting, but the role players surprisingly stepped up. But role players typically play better at home. They show up when the home crowd's behind you. On the road, those guys are not as reliable. So if they need those guys to hit shots and they have to go do it in Philadelphia, it's not as likely to come to them. So I wouldn't expect the Wizards to pull this off, even if Embiid's not there for 3 games. I just don't see it happening. I mean, winning 3 straight games is hard against anybody. It's even harder when you're not even the better team.
The Wizards can forget it. Like this, the thought of them coming back from down 3-0 in a 7-game series, being the 8 seed against the 1 seed, like that's absurd, right? That's Disney movie stuff. It's not reality at all. The 76ers are better than the Wizards if the 76ers are blindfolded. So, like, it's just not going to happen. Put this clip on Old Takes Exposed if the Wizards, come back and win the series somehow.
Yeah, I wouldn't hold out much hope for that happening, even though I'm a Wizards guy. So, move on to the Hawks over the Knicks, 3-1 so far. Series returns to Madison Square Garden. I think the series is a wrap. I think the Hawks winning Game 5. The one win that the Knicks managed to pick up, they needed an incredible run. They were down 15 in that game. The Hawks are just better. They're just flat out the better team. Even if the Knicks are able to rally and win Game 5, they're not winning in Atlanta for Game 6. This series is over, and they'll face the Sixers in the second round, which will be interesting, especially because, like we said, we don't know what Embiid's status will be. But those are two pretty good teams going at it in the second round, so look forward to that one. Move out west, the LA Clippers, back from the dead since our last show. They went down 2-0 to the Mavericks after losing both games at home. They went down by as many as 19 points in Game 3. Corey was watching briefly that Friday night.
I fell asleep. Rashonda watched most of the game, but still, I mean, we both fell asleep before the game was over, and we were surprised when we woke up and saw that they had won after being down 11-0 at the start.
Yeah.
And Luka couldn't miss from outside.
Yeah, the Mavericks' issue is, again, they're relying on role players a lot here because they've only got one star, and that's Luka. And Luka's dealing with a neck strain. They say
what about
he's
Kristaps?
Yeah, the unicorn. What's the deal with him? Does he suck?
Yeah, he sucks.
Okay.
Like, he's 7'3" and is soft. You know, he can't guard anybody. He's not a particularly effective post player. He's afraid to drive on people. He kind of just stands around and shoots threes, not particularly well this series. I mean, he's just not effective. And
he's not a good basketball player then.
No, and they desperately needed him to be a good basketball player, and it just doesn't look like it's happening for him.
It sounds like how my mom described Jake Lehman one time as one of those blow-up men you see at a car dealership. Like he's just long and just a bunch of arms, but not really, providing any substance on the basketball floor.
That's an adequate description of Kristaps Porzingis and probably sometimes Jake Layman when he was at Maryland, especially in some of those middle years where the Terps were really struggling. But I think the Mavericks still have a chance. It's not a great one because, they just blew a 2-0 lead, and now Clippers have regained home court advantage, which seemingly doesn't matter because nobody has held home court advantage yet this series. So maybe they'll just lose all four at home like the Houston Astros did in the 2019 World Series, and none of this actually matters. But I think the fact that Luka seemingly is going to be 100% for this game makes it more interesting because Luka's the best player in the series. But I just don't think the Mavericks have great enough defense to stop Kawhi Leonard and Paul George consistently. And frankly, Luka can't do it by himself. He didn't have to in games 1 and 2. His teammates really stepped up and knocked down their shots. Game 3, they kind of fell apart late. In Game 4, they just no-showed. So they're going to have to step it back up in Game 5 if they want to make it interesting. But
It is interesting how you mentioned the Mavericks are relying too much on role players, but they kind of counter your earlier point that when you rely on role players, it can be really good at home, but not so much on the road.
Yes.
It's been completely flipped.
The script has been flipped, yes. They were knocking down all their shots, and then in games 3 and 4, not so much. So maybe there's something about just playing the Clippers at home because the Clippers are just cursed.
Maybe Mark Cuban needs to actually rush the court and be like one of these other fans we're going to be talking about shortly.
Oh, my God. So that series is one to keep an eye on. The Clippers still have championship aspirations, so if they're able to get past the Mavericks, they might be able to do something, especially given what's going on with the Lakers, who got absolutely unpantsed in Game 5. LeBron was not effective. He was passive, and I'm not going to give him a pass for it. Everybody seems to just act like, ho-hum, LeBron didn't have a great game. No. LeBron James is still being hailed as the best basketball player in the world, even though he's 36 or however old he is. Well, the best basketball player in the world doesn't go into a critical Game 5 and get their asses handed to him and not contribute jack squat to the team and then expect me to just be like, oh, it's cool. We never would have let LeBron get away with that when he was younger because we had expectations. Well, I'm supposedly still supposed to have high expectations of LeBron James, and he was disappointing to say the least. Now, it's not entirely his fault. It's never any one player's fault when you're down by 30 at half. But
What?
yeah, it was a joke. It was 66-36 at half. It was a
God.
joke. Like
The
LeBron,
Lakers organization needs to give all the Suns fans their money back, just who bought tickets to that game. They're supposed to be competitive, and it wasn't.
I'm sure the Suns fans did not care.
Yeah, I'm sure
that their
they're
team
okay.
was blowing out the Lakers.
Maybe
They're-
give the money back
they-
to the Lakers fans.
No, the Lakers, they need to pay up for that. That
no-show.
steaming turd of a performance.
It was particularly egregious because that game was being played on TNT, and then the Portland-Denver game, which was amazing, got bumped to NBA TV, which not everybody has access to. So all the casuals got to watch this crap game. Meanwhile, virtually nobody actually got to see what was going on with Portland and Denver last night because it was on NBA TV. So they
Kind of where it belongs, frankly.
not with how the game went last night. I mean, you got two of the top 10 players in the league going head-to-head. That game should be on television for NBA fans to see, and I think it's ridiculous that the NBA has started slotting games on NBA TV during the playoffs. I mean, they've got enough ability to schedule.
There's certainly enough channels.
Yeah, there's certainly enough channels, certainly enough availability, enough way to space out the schedule. You don't have to have two first-round games in the Western Conference going head-to-head at 10 o'clock. You can make it work a little bit better than that. But anyway, the Lakers are in trouble. Anthony Davis was grimacing during warm-ups during Game 5. That does not exactly inspire confidence that he's going to be back in Game 6 or even Game 7 if that happens. So the Lakers go home for Game 6. Obviously, it's a must-win. It's an elimination game for him. Chris Paul looks like he re-aggravated his shoulder injury. But frankly, the Lakers just don't look like they have the juice without Anthony Davis playing effectively against this Suns team. It just seems like the Suns are good. I mean, people act like the Suns just weren't going to compete with the Lakers in this series, but the Suns were a good team. There's a reason why they had the second best record in the Western Conference. If you're not fully ready to go and you're missing your second best player, you're not going to beat a team like the Suns. It's just not going to happen. This was one of the problems with the Lakers ending up being on the low end of the bracket because they were going to have to try to get healthy and get fit while going up against a game opponent. They're not playing the Memphis Grizzlies where they maybe could have gotten away with it. They're playing against the second best team in the NBA per the regular season. That's not an easy out. I don't care what the circumstances are. So they're in trouble. I'd be surprised if they were able to win this series. But LeBron's done crazier things. He's made bigger comebacks. And who knows, maybe Anthony Davis gets a little Mr. Miyagi treatment in the locker room or something, and he's able to get his ass on the court and contribute. But you had Charles Barkley calling him street clothes during the halftime and post-game show, knocking him for not being available. So we'll see how that plays out, but it certainly looks like the Lakers are going home early. So we'll move to NBA Siberia version 2, because version 1 is Memphis versus Utah. We got another series like that with Portland versus Denver, but last night's game was wild and crazy, as Corey could see based off of my Twitter activity.
Oh, yeah.
Because I was like, wow, this game's wild. And Damian Lillard went as high of Dame time as you possibly could. He was hitting every single shot he took, even the ones that he had no business hitting, like the ones that he banked in. They were still falling. He had 6 straight threes over the course of the end of regulation and the first overtime to basically keep the Trailblazers alive throughout the game. And his teammates absolutely sold. They no-showed for him. Enes Kanter had 1 basket on like a putback, but that was it for the entire 2 overtime periods. They scored 19 points. 17 of them were by Damian Lillard, 2 by Kanter. CJ McCollum turned the ball over late. He missed a bunch of open looks. Robert Covington missed a dunk, like a wide-open dunk. And the Nuggets didn't miss their shots. I mean, Nikola Jokic was incredible. He made this just preposterous skip pass to the corner where the clock was winding down, nobody was cutting, and he just somehow managed to thread the needle and get it up over a dude jumping to try to pick it up while still getting it to the shooter in a nice position to shoot it instead of having to reach for it or the ball going out of bounds. He just dropped it right in the bucket, and then Michael Porter Jr. was able to knock down the shot, and that was pretty much the game. I mean, it was just a game like that from Damian Lillard, which was historic, he hit more three-point shots in a playoff game than anybody ever. And given the fact that Klay Thompson exists, and Stephen Curry exists, and James Harden exists, that's pretty incredible.
Is there anything more frustrating, though, in sports than when a terrific player like Damian Lillard does next-level things and it goes to waste because their teammates just completely crap the bed?
Yeah, it's brutal to watch, especially because Portland's supporting cast isn't that bad. Like, it's not like these guys suck. CJ McCollum is a borderline all-star. Robert Covington is a borderline all-star. Carmelo Anthony, he's not as good as he used to be, but he's still an effective scorer when you give him open looks like he was getting. And Enes Kanter's a good offensive big man, and they just all choked. That's all you can say. These good players went out there and choked. And frankly, the fact that the Nuggets were even in position to have to deal with Damian Lillard the way they were was because they respected those other guys. I kept yelling at the TV, why aren't you doubling Damian Lillard? Why aren't you sending a second body at him when he crosses half court? Because they didn't want to. They didn't want to leave CJ McCollum wide open. They said, we'd rather let Damian Lillard shoot contested jumpers over a one-on-one defender than to double him and leave other guys open because we think those guys can hit shots too. Well, eventually they caught on and said, okay, we got to get the ball out of Dame's hands and just hope for the best. And they hoped for the best and they got it because the other guys didn't hit the shots. So it was a shame to watch. And I think that this is going to be the game that people point to when they ultimately decide to blow this team up because they're a good team. They have been for a long time, but they just don't have what it takes to get over the top. Yeah. They're offensively skewed, but not to the point like the Brooklyn Nets where they're just going to run away with games. And so they don't play any defense, and their offense just isn't good enough to make up for that. So last but, and probably least to be fair, the Jazz versus the Grizz. The Jazz are up 3-1. They've won 3 straight. Donovan Mitchell came back. He's been the best player in the series since. And the Jazz are going to win. They're going to go to the second round. They're going to play the winner of the Clippers and the Mavs. And frankly, I think the Jazz could beat either of those teams because the Jazz look pretty unstoppable. They're deep. They've got really good, effective wing players. They might struggle with the Clippers a little bit just because it's hard to defend Kawhi Leonard, but I wouldn't sleep on them as a team that could make the conference finals. And with the Lakers potentially screwed, this Jazz team could end up in the NBA Finals. Like, it wouldn't surprise me one bit if they got there. Mm-hmm. So moving on to some other NBA shenanigans that have absolutely nothing to do with the players, but the dicks that watch the game. We've had a ton of incidents over the last week and change regarding fan behavior when it comes to the players. Russell Westbrook had popcorn dumped on him. I think this is the first noted one.
Yep.
And he got rightfully pissed off and was ready to go throw hands with the fan because that's what Russ does when fans deliberately disrespect him or antagonize him or throw stuff at him. He's not going to back down, and I think rightfully so. I think we've come a long way since Ron Artest and Malice at the Palace, where at the time everybody's like, oh my God, that's horrible that the players did that. Now we're kind of looking at it like, the fans kind of deserve it when they act that way.
Yeah, fans need to, sit the hell down.
Yeah, so Ron Artest was a visionary when he decided to go beat some ass in the crowd after getting beer thrown on him and got suspended for the entire season by David Stern. Obviously, we hope it doesn't come to that. We don't want fans getting the crap beaten out of them by much bigger and stronger men. But at the same time,
we don't want that, considering some of the foolishness that these people keep doing.
I don't know. As far as I'm concerned, they're asking for it. I'm not saying that I want to see
sure,
it.
Yeah,
but
I don't feel bad.
But if the players do it, I'm not going to feel bad for the fan at all.
It's not about a sympathy thing. It's just a matter of it's bad for your league to have fans and players fighting. Like, I know that, and it's on the fans to not act this way. It's not
exactly.
on the the onus is not on the players to be meek around
the players are
fans.
Playing the game. That's their job, and if you leave them alone, that's all they're gonna do.
I hate watching people do things that they wouldn't do in any other place. Like, if you would throw popcorn at Russell Westbrook on the street, then okay, fine, go ahead and do it in an arena. But you wouldn't do it to Russell Westbrook on the street because he would knock you out. And
yeah, I mean that's kind of thing, because I think that a lot of these people, it's not that they wouldn't want to throw it at him. It's just that they would recognize, okay, if it's on the street, I don't have a bunch of witnesses to protect me potentially, and so there's no doubt in my mind that he's going to knock my ass out. Whereas in front of a bunch of fans, you're thinking, well, maybe he'll, restrain himself because of all these witnesses. But I mean, we saw that incident. We saw the Knicks fan spit on Trae Young.
That was the worst one as far as I'm concerned. I mean, that's disgusting.
We saw a Celtics fan throw a full bottle at Kyrie Irving. The racist insults directed at John Morant's family. The Wizards fan having to be tackled by the security guard
and that guy
running
was just
onto the court.
And that incident wasn't antagonistic towards any players.
No.
It was just some guy being an idiot, but.
Yeah, and then Evan just put in the show notes a call to the Nationals fan who streaked completely naked and ran and crawled into the tarp roll.
You see,
we're seeing so much of this, and I was talking to Rashonda about this last night actually. So I was intrigued when I saw that you guys put it in the show notes. And it's a little bit of an extreme comparison, but it's not that we've never seen fans act a fool at sporting events before, but we're seeing it. It's happening every night right now.
Every other game has,
and it feels similar to an extent to the increase in mass shootings that we've seen since lockdown restrictions have lifted. Right? Obviously, those are way worse. We're talking about loss of life versus insults and throwing stuff at people, but I feel like it speaks to kind of the same type of person who they're just this awful individual who just wants to be as mean to people and as disruptive as they can. And they've been locked down all this time, having all this pent up energy. And now as soon as lockdown restrictions lift, as soon as stadiums start allowing fans to come into the arena, they're just next level right now. And we're getting to a point, I feel like, where we almost are going to have to say we need to close these arenas down again because the fans are being too much.
Yeah, I think that there is something to that where it's just this pent-up aggression where we've all been there. Like right now, we've all got a lot of steam to blow off. It's just that some of us grown-ups and non-sociopaths know how to do it in a constructive way that doesn't harm people or disrupt or ruin the time for others. But as we've seen time and time again, not everybody has that ability to handle themselves, and this is what happens when you let a bunch of dorks get into the arena after 15 months of not going to any games, and they're just like, hey, I'm going to do whatever I want, because why not? Well, congratulations. Enjoy your charges. Enjoy going to jail. Enjoy paying a fine. Enjoy going home to your wife or your girlfriend and having them say, yeah, you're a loser, I'm done with you, and you deserve all of it because you can't act like a grown-up. So no sympathy for anybody, and frankly, I think that the NBA has handled it as well as they can. I mean, you can't tell fans they can't come into the arena because that's extreme and that hurts your product. We've seen just how good having fans are, how it affects the viewing pleasure, even on television, of having a raucous crowd at Madison Square Garden or at any of these playoff venues. It really changes the viewing experience. It changes the atmosphere for the game, whether you're there or whether you're watching on television. But this is the type of crap that can't go on, and I think that the NBA has taken the right approach to this, where zero tolerance, and frankly, given the fact that it's not 2004 anymore, the idea that the players have to somehow protect their image based off of the fact that it's a majority black game, and this idea that if the black players start beating up the white fans that started the confrontation, suddenly we've got, a bunch of racist tropes coming in. We're sort of moving past that crap, and I didn't like it when David Stern played into it in the mid-2000s. He did the same stupid thing with the dress code that he implemented, requiring the players wear suits. Yeah. That went by the wayside because that was stupid. We are evolving finally when it comes to how we handle these athletes and understanding how they are treated differently than other people, not just because of their race, but because of their clout as well. And we have to take that approach at all levels, and we can't just let fans act fools and expect these players not to retaliate at some point. Like, I don't care when Russell Westbrook smacks the phone out of somebody's hand because he gets right in his face as he's walking to the tunnel and hits him with the phone by accident. No. Respect his boundaries. He's a human being. You wouldn't want somebody sticking a phone in your face, so don't do it to him.
But he's famous. He asked for the attention.
Not like that.
No, he has to play basketball.
Right.
Yeah. the NFL, when you buy an NFL ticket, you are also signing the fan code of conduct. So, they can arrest you and whatnot and throw you in jail if you decide to act a fool at one of the games. Learning to behave yourself around other humans isn't hard. Like we teach toddlers this. So if you're an adult and you think you're old enough to have a few drinks of liquid courage and you're going to go out and act a fool like this, like there's no excuse. There is none. There's no defending any of these people. You should obviously know better. And like what were you thinking? Why would you spit on another person? Why would you throw a bottle at somebody? What are you doing? So, I people always talk about how Veterans Stadium had a big old jail in the basement of it and stuff. Well, yeah, because people keep doing stuff like this. You got to go to jail. You need to have your tickets revoked. You need to be banned from all further games, and you need to go to jail.
100% agree.
Yeah.
Well, that's all we've got for basketball. We'll obviously keep everybody updated as we push through the playoffs like we have the last couple of weeks. Let's move on to some baseball news, and let's start with the Baltimore Orioles getting a win yesterday just in time for the show, so we didn't have to come into another show and say, here's how many wins they've had since the last time we spoke to y'all.
And that's
the list.
Yeah.
The O's, hun.
Yes.
Hon.
So ain't the beer cold? Oh my goodness!
Yes,
we won a game.
I turned this game on in the middle of it, and I saw that they were up 6-1, and I was like,
"Oh no!"
I didn't think, "Oh, sweet, we're gonna win." I thought, "Wait, could this be it? Maybe we'll win this one." And so, of course, it gets to the point where it's 7-4, and the tying runs at the plate for the Twins, and I'm just like, cold salsa is definitely giving up a home run here. Like
this next pitch is over the fence.
it's going bye-bye. There's no way we actually hold this lead. It's right there for the Twins to take it from us. But fortunately, the Orioles were able to actually get that guy out and get their first win in 16 days. My goodness. Fortunately, we did not get to the point where people were having to jump in the Patapsco River because they lost 20 straight. We avoided that ignominy. We didn't have to do that, but still, the Orioles stink. But hey, a win's a win is a win, so I'll take it.
Yeah, no longer need to worry about the Orioles going 17 and 145.
Yes, 18 and 144 is still on the table, but
that is
we'll celebrate we'll celebrate the W for now. Just a couple notes about the Orioles, though. More importantly, the future Orioles, the Bowie Bay Sox, continue to light it up. And I think one of the social media teams for one of the minor league franchises pointed out that in all of minor league baseball, there are 4 teams with 18 or more wins, and 2 of them are Orioles, teams, basically affiliates. So, good news there. The young Orioles, the future Orioles, are good. It's just they got to get to the show, and they're not quite there yet. But we've talked about it here between us that we'd like to go see the Bay Sox play at some point. So I'm definitely up for that at some point because they've got an even bigger infusion of young talent because they had some call-ups hit Bowie just within the last week or so. So the Bowie Bay Sox are even better and more exciting now, which is great. But
yeah, no, I today was my last day of classes and graduation Friday, some faculty meetings early next week, but then after that, we can start planning when we're gonna go.
Yeah. Okay. So Evan, do you have anything else cool to add about the Orioles and their 1 win in 2 weeks and change?
I mean, I'm also glad they snapped. I mean, they snapped their overall 14-game losing streak, but they also snapped a 16-game losing streak versus the Twins.
Yes, that's true.
Which they always lose to the Twins. We beat the Twins? What? Yeah, it's great. I'm so happy that the Orioles won. Just a game. We just won a game. It's great.
Well, when you go a half a month without winning, 1 win's a relief. Like, it really does just, like, for a team that's 17 and 37 or 18 and 37 now, I think
Something
that's
like
the record.
Sure.
Yeah, you're 19 games under 500, and it's barely past Memorial Day, and you're celebrating. That's life as an Orioles fan.
Well,
so.
I gotta say, like, I feel you guys there because I'm right there with you. just a sense of relief after the Yankees snapped a 4-game losing streak yesterday. I mean, we're just like you guys.
In the same boat. Very relatable. Losing 14 straight compared to losing 4. I know it's a tough road. It's a tough road. We've all been
the Eunice place is the same, you know? Like,
have the Yankees ever lost 14 games in a row in your entire lifetime watching them?
I don't think so.
I'd be surprised if they did.
I don't think so.
Have they even lost like 10?
Probably not.
Yeah, I'd be surprised. So tell us about your team.
Yeah, so Clint Frazier had a walk-off home run in the 11th inning on Tuesday that snapped a 4-game losing streak. Last week we were coming off our first loss of the week since our last show, and this week we just couldn't seem to win. It was interesting because the other night, Sweeney Murdy, who is a beat reporter for 66 WFAN, said that when the Yankees win, they can look like they'll never lose again. And when they lose, they can look like they'll never win again. And I gotta say, that's been pretty true this year of the Yankees, because when they lose, it's ugly. And when they win, like, okay, we finally turned a corner. We figured it out. That was a legit game.
Yeah, that's the life of a 3 true outcomes team, a team that relies on hitting home runs and strikes out a lot. Well, when you don't hit the home runs, it's rough to watch.
And it's funny because, I was talking to one of my students today. I was like, because he's a Nats fan, I was like, the Nats kind of have that same feeling, and it's because they sort of rely on the same things that the Yankees do to an extent. They really do rely on the home run to win their games. So, it's been a frustrating week for the Yankees, but they did get that win. Clint Frazier had a good game, which was nice. But the Yankees are in a fight. They're, the Blue Jays, the Rays, and the Red Sox. I mean, earlier in the year when the Red Sox started hot, I asked you, are they for real or no? And you said, I don't think they are. At this point, I think that they might be for real. They're not really going away.
Yeah.
So it's a 4-headed race.
Yeah, I didn't think the Red Sox would be bad this year, but when they were just that far ahead of the pack, I was like, they'll come back down to earth. But I still figured they'd be competitive. Yeah.
Yeah, but
it's just that I figured the Yankees would just turn on the Jets and cruise by them. But the Yankees have had their ups and downs.
Yeah,
everybody has this year. It's not been a very dominant year, which is interesting because the last few years of American League ball, the cream of the crop has risen early and stayed there throughout the season, whereas this year, I think it's obviously been a few weeks now, but there was a point where we were basically a quarter of the way through the season and nobody had above a 600 winning percentage. So nobody was really good. It was just a bunch of mediocre. And it seems like some teams in the National League are starting to separate themselves a bit. The Dodgers have sort of refound their footing. The Padres are really good. We kind of expected those teams to be good. American League, it's still really competitive.
Yeah. So not too much to go over on the injury front right now for the Yankees, but a couple notes. So Luke Voit came back from the paternity leave list and immediately hurt his oblique, and so he's out probably until late June, early July. He's going to be out for a little while. Luis Severino pitched a simulated game a few days ago, 40 pitches. He hit 97 on the radar gun, so they seemed pretty impressed with him. Last week, they were saying that his window to return was between June and August. I was like, that's a pretty wide window. They've now narrowed that to an expectation that he could return sometime in July. He's supposed to start a Double-A assignment this coming weekend. Before we move on to some of the other MLB topics, I wanted to play a quick game with you guys. So, for whatever reason, on the MLB at Bat app this week, they had an article about the current Iron Men of baseball, and by Iron Men they really just meant the players on each team who have had the most games played since the start of the 2019 season, which is a pretty short-term thing to look at for Iron Man status.
That's that's like 280 games or something
right
like that.
So just for the Yankees and the Orioles, who do you think has played the most games in that span for the Yankees?
Oh man,
is it Gleyber Torres?
It is not.
Since 2019, I see. It's hard to remember when some of the younger guys like Gio Urshela got called up, so it's hard to say them.
So 2019 was like 8 years ago.
I know, that's so.
It was also last year
some
because
stuff.
2020 didn't really happen.
Yeah, that's the before times, man. That's tough to think about. I know it's obviously not Aaron Judge. He's hurt all the time.
You're correct
it's
about
not
that.
Giancarlo Stanton.
It's not
Giancarlo
Stanton.
Stanton. 30 games.
So it is DJ LeMahieu.
Okay, that makes
245 games.
Okay.
Okay. For the Orioles, who do you think is their Iron Man of that time frame?
Oh, that could be anybody.
Yeah, no, that's brutal.
Right.
Let's see.
So I'll give you a hint that this player has played in 206 games in that time frame.
It's not Trey Mancini, is it?
It sure
Wow,
is.
he missed the
What?
entire 60-game season.
He missed the entire 2020 abbreviated season, and he is still the Orioles Iron Man.
Because I was
since
I was
2019.
thinking about him because I was like, okay, he's been a regular everyday player for a while now, and obviously he missed last year, but that's only 60 games. I'm like looking around the rest of the roster. I'm just like, Cedric Mullins has been up and down in the minor leagues. Anthony Santander's missed time, and he's been up and down in the minor leagues. It's like it might be Mancini.
Yeah,
and
no,
it was.
It sure is.
I was going to say Cedric Mullins. That's shocking.
Yeah.
Corey, I want to ask you a question. Do you know who's starting in center field for the Yankees tonight? Have you seen?
I did not look at the starting lineup before we got started with the show, so I don't know. Who is it?
It is Aaron Judge. So
Okay, I mean, Aaron Judge. It's hard to call him an underrated outfielder at this point because I feel like he does get some respect as a good
people have
defensive
caught
player.
on. People have caught on.
But I also feel like some people tend to point out like right field is really kind of the easiest outfield position to play.
certainly at Yankee Stadium.
And certainly at Yankee
Yeah, at
Stadium.
that place it is,
But
yeah.
he is a legitimately good outfielder. He's got a great arm. I don't see any reason why he can't play center field, but that's interesting just because I don't think he's ever started in center field before.
Is there a reason why he's over there? Is somebody hurt?
I would assume somebody's hurt. Is Aaron Hicks healthy? He's
No,
always
he
injured.
he got hurt, so that might be it.
Maybe they wanted to give
And
Gary a day off and
Gardner's
wanted
got
to
a
DH
day
him
off
or
and
something.
stuff.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
I don't know.
Okay, well that's interesting.
Yeah.
But just a note on the Iron Man thing, it just reminds me of I think back in 2015, like Manny Machado played all 162 games. He was the only player in the league to play all 162 games that year, and I'm just like, imagine doing that 16 years in a row or whatever it was, like Cal Ripken did. It's just
We
insane.
certainly don't see that today. I mean, each one of us is like every day having to check our lineups to see, okay, are they getting an off day today? Like,
is somebody day to day with a thumb or whatever the hell? It's
Tim Anderson missed a game against the Orioles because he had allergies and was out.
I mean, I don't want to laugh because allergies could suck, but I mean, it just goes to show anything can happen. I mean, it's a 162 game season. I mean, like, just because baseball is not football in terms of physicality doesn't mean you can't get nicked up. So
There's a lot of them as well.
yep.
Like, it doesn't look like it's all that physically demanding, but you got to do that every single day in the blazing heat. Blazing heat everywhere, except for in Chicago, where it was freezing cold and windy.
Yeah, plus the nature of baseball being an everyday sport with 162 games, each game's not nearly as important as like a football game where if you miss one, it can ruin your season. Whereas baseball, they're more likely to say you're a little banged up, you can take the day off or a day or two off. Whereas in the NFL, you're a little banged up, get your ass on the field and play unless you're got a torn
tape
ligament
it
or
up,
something.
Yeah.
some dirt on it,
Yep.
and go back out there.
yep.
So we got, again, more unpleasant headlines to discuss because people just can't act right. We'll start with Bob Brenly, who is a color commentator for the Arizona Diamondbacks local broadcast team. And he got himself into a little bit of hot water by making some smart-ass remark about Marcus Stroman's do-rag that he had on. Marcus Stroman is...
The pitcher for the Mets.
He's a pitcher for the Mets, and I believe he's part Puerto Rican, part African American.
Yep.
So he wears a do-rag when he's on the mound to maintain his hair, like a lot of black people do. Not a big deal. Not something that needs to be
Pointed out
or made as a joke by the peanut gallery. But then in comes Bob Brenly, and I guess
That's just that.
for whatever reason he decided to say, I think that's the same do-rag that Tom Seaver used to wear. Ha ha, because Tom Seaver, the great white pitcher, wouldn't wear something as lame as a do-rag or whatever the point of his weird
I could not
unnecessary
understand
comment
what the
was.
hell he was talking
and
about.
and when I first heard it, I was like, okay, I wasn't like, oh my god, that's so offensive, but I'm also like, why do we constantly have to point out things that minorities do with their hair or what they wear around their neck? It's not worth mentioning. It's
Well,
just what they do. Why are you mocking it?
You know, and Evan may have kind of thought about the same thing I did when I saw this, because he watches Survivor just like I do. But 2 seasons ago in Island of the Idols, I believe, was it Jamal who, one of the other contestants had said something to him about taking a pot off the fire and using his do-rag instead of calling it his buff to take the pot off the fire. And Jamal, a lot of people got like really upset about Jamal's reaction on social media, which I thought was ridiculous, because Jamal was really calm, and he explained exactly why he found it offensive that it was, being framed that way, and, talked about how a lot of times when white people in particular point out, black people using do-rags, it often conjures up the image of the stereotypical tatted up, druggy type of black person that you stereotypically might think of in that sense. And so I can completely understand why, even though, that other contestant, I don't think really meant anything offensive by it, that doesn't mean that it isn't still offensive and problematic and something that needs to be addressed. You still need to be aware of this. And to his credit, Bob Brenly did apologize directly to Marcus Stroman and to the Mets organization and to baseball, and he said that he's going to be attending some sensitivity classes to try and, I guess, learn more and better himself. And some of that is just kind of typical,
PR stuff.
PR speak. But he seems to. He's at least recognized and acknowledged that it was problematic and they shouldn't have done it.
Yeah, I get all that, but there's a pattern of behavior.
Yes, absolutely.
With Fernando Tatis and him commenting on, if he didn't have that big tie or chain around his neck, maybe he would have beaten
is that Bob
ball
Brenly
up.
too?
Yeah, same
okay.
guy made a similar comment about
there you go.
some of the attire that Fernando Tatis wore, implying that somehow him wearing a chain around his neck made him a worse baseball player, or was putting style over substance, or all the negative stuff we hear typically white guys say about minority players.
I take back my to his credit comment, because clearly he hasn't learned anything yet. When he actually learns from this, then maybe. But
yeah, that's all the PR machine. I mean, and this isn't the first time we've heard people make comments. Like, I think the Pirates announcers commented on, I don't know if it was Ronald Acuna or if it was Ozzie Albies or somebody on the Braves, where he got hit by a pitch, and the guy basically said, well, I mean, but look at that chain around his neck. Like, as if the fact that he wore jewelry somehow was the reason he got plunked and he deserved it. I'm like, what are you doing? And it's this type of commentary that just, it's like you're ridiculing the athletes on the field that are way better than you ever were, because, you were the manager of the Diamondbacks, who basically won the World Series because you had Curt Schilling and Randy Johnson on the same rotation. Like, you didn't do anything special. You just said, okay, we'll win the games that the two best pitchers maybe in baseball pitched. Great. Way to go. So we're not exactly talking about some steward of the game here in Bob Brenly. And the game is changing because the game has become more international. And it's becoming more available to people who are a little different than the stuffy white guys that seemingly older folks want baseball to be. And it's just like, and the baseball's better for it. I mean, who are the biggest, most exciting stars? It's guys like Ronald Acuna. It's guys like Fernando Tatis. It's guys like Tim Anderson. These guys are fun to watch because they go out there and they play the way they want to play. You're not entitled to tell them how they should play the game. They're allowed to play the way they want to play, just like you play the way you want to play. You don't have to wear a chain around your neck. You don't have to use a do-rag. Why would you? You don't have the hair that's appropriate for it. It doesn't make any sense for you to do so. So maybe show a little respect that not everybody's like you. It's not that hard. Again,
it really isn't. It really isn't.
This is another situation where now we're targeting this at older folks, but let's just grow up a little bit, please.
Mm-hmm. So the Tim Anderson bobblehead, the figure is of him flipping his bat when he hit a walk-off home run.
See, the thing is, Tim Anderson, I love it because, like, calling his bat flips feels inaccurate because it's more like a bat throw.
It's like a hammer toss
like
or
he
something.
Just takes the thing and he chucks it, and it's amazing. I love it.
So, I mean, it's Bob Brenly, this as you pointed out, this isn't the first time that he's beclowned himself over some racially insensitive remarks about baseball players and what they're wearing on the field. I'm not a Bob Brenly fan because I love Buck Showalter, and feel like Bob Brenly gets too much credit for taking over that Diamondbacks team and leading them to the championship. But I mean, it's obvious he had no business saying this. It's obvious why he said it. What are you even talking about? You're supposed to be analyzing the baseball, and it's just inappropriate, and it's just blatantly racist. Like, why would you? What are you even talking about with the do-rag? Let him wear whatever he wants. It's okay, right? It's under his hat. His hat is on. It's a non-issue, but Bob Brenly has to point it out. Bob Brenly has to point out the chains and stuff. Like, just let the players be themselves, okay?
Why do we have to have an opinion about literally everything? And I mean, I know that I say that as somebody who's on a podcast where we talk about our opinions on everything that we want to talk about, but why do we need to share our opinions when it
particularly when you have an ignorant opinion, right?
Yeah, it's this idea that people can say whatever they want without consequence because America and stuff like that, but it doesn't really work that way, and we know why it doesn't work that way. But it's just people think that if they don't get to say their piece, regardless of how ignorant or racist it might be, they feel like they're being oppressed, which results in a whole bunch of people airing a whole bunch of grievances about a whole bunch of nonsense that isn't real. So we'll move on to some more tomfoolery with the Oakland Athletics and the food that they provide their minor league players, which I wouldn't feed to a dog. There was some crappy attempt at a sandwich.
Literally just had like a piece of American cheese, a piece of lettuce, and a tomato. There was like no cold cuts. Like, it wasn't on wheat bread or anything. It was some plain, gross white bread. Like, what are you doing? And then they had a sad attempt at a fajita.
Burrito or whatever.
It looked like a fajita.
Tortilla and peppers.
And like one little piece of chicken, maybe. Like, I was like, what the hell is this? Like, that's not a meal. It looked like somebody came and ate half the food out of the box and then said, oh, well, here's what's left. I'm like, this isn't a meal. It's like somebody's like, or let their dog or their pet walk up there and take the meat out of it and say, oh, well, sorry, my dog ate your dinner.
It reminded me of the crummy excuse of a boxed meal that the NCAA was giving to women's players during the NCAA tournament at the beginning before they got called out on it.
That's an insult to the NCAA, though. Like, with this Oakland A's minor league food, like that was like some bird food or something. Just some little samples, a little stuff. Like, that's not a meal for a person. Are you kidding me?
I feel like it would have been more dignified to tell the players, you got to feed yourself and go out and get your own food. Right. Versus feeding them just a box of crap. Like, what are you doing? That's just being rude at that point.
Now, the interesting thing here is that the Athletics went on to essentially blame the vendor. They said that as soon as they became aware of this, they cut ties with the vendor like a couple weeks ago. So apparently these pictures were not from the other day or anything. But I'm sitting here like, okay, so, but what did you pay for? Because I tend to assume that the vendor is going to give the players what they were paid to provide the players. So if you got some really crummy excuse for a meal, you probably paid a crummy amount of money for that meal.
I mean, we've seen, though, the way that Major League Baseball franchises treat their minor league players, their minor league teams. You don't get the benefit of the doubt at this point.
No,
you don't get to simply say, oh, well, it was just a misunderstanding with the vendor. Nah, this probably happened because y'all didn't care. Because you've never cared.
Yep.
Did y'all hear about the one of the Cubs minor league teams that the hotel they were going to stay at was full? So they were the minor leaguers were told they were on their own about figuring out where they're going to sleep.
What?
Excuse me?
This happened.
This is a work trip.
And so like they were going to sleep in the locker room.
All right, well, you guys are on your own for finding some players to play the game tomorrow.
My goodness.
Yeah. So they were going to sleep in the locker room, but it blew up on social media, and that's when it was decided that they were going to rectify the situation, and they're going to have their employees sleep in, beds instead of on the floor in a locker room.
My goodness.
Just insanity. So, on a lighter note, we sort of discussed this at the top of the show, but we'll give Evan a chance to detail further. Evan, you went to Chicago this weekend to watch some baseball games. Tell us about it.
Yes, I did. So, it went pretty smoothly for the most part. I flew in and checked into the hotel and rode the subway down to a guaranteed rate field. And as soon as the subway came out of the ground on the south side, that's when the raindrops started. And it was dark, and it was cold, and it was windy, and it was pouring. And I'm standing there. I got my umbrella, which is really flimsy and kept getting turned inside out. But I was standing at the gate waiting, and they had all the bobbleheads all covered up, and they were handing them out. So I went in and was just pacing up and down the concourse for a few hours while the game was in delay.
You got a really pretty picture of the tarp.
Yes, I mean, the picture I sent you guys was the best picture I took. I took several pictures, but this one's pretty good. So right as soon as it was about to stop raining, I had checking the weather app and stuff. Right as soon as the rain was tapering off, that's when they announced that they postponed the game. I'm like, oh jeez. So, my ticket's going to be refunded, and I just took the subway back to the hotel, so I essentially got a free bobblehead. So that's pretty cool.
Excellent.
And kind of fortunate because the Orioles were in the middle of their losing streak. They're probably not going to win, so might have lucked out not getting to see the Orioles, to be honest. And then let's see, the next day I got back on the subway and rode out to Wrigley. Got to see the Cubs and the Reds. I think the Cubs won 10-2 or something like that. It was nice to see another team bumble around and not do anything right. The Reds bullpen walked 4 guys in a row in the 6th inning, and they all came around to score. Amir Garrett has no idea where he's throwing the ball. He got vociferously booed when he came in. Everybody hates him. And I like Amir Garrett, just because of the, I don't like fake tough guys. So when the Pirates were being jerks a couple years ago, and he just decided to handle it himself, mad respect for that guy. And he seems like an interesting character anyway. He's not stiff and dull, but he was terrible. The guy who came in to replace him was also terrible. It was at least the sun was up, but it was cold and windy. So I had a nice upper deck seat in the middle of the section between the poles.
Nice.
So that was fun. I kept score as best I could. I couldn't feel my fingers after a while.
Oh. That's never fun.
Yeah.
Now, this was not your first time in either stadium, was it?
That's true, yeah.
You'd been to both before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, both on the same weekend before as well. So, the last time was in 2018. That was the David Bodie walk-off grand slam.
On Sunday Night Baseball.
That was incredible.
That was just amazing.
God.
Yeah.
What?
I couldn't believe that happened.
I couldn't either. I'm just sitting there, just 2 strikes. This guy's probably gonna, he's gonna strike out or roll over or something. Then crack, and whenever you had a ball game and a guy hits the ball up in the air, everybody just starts screaming. That's what people do for some reason. And I'm like, well, it seems to be hit pretty good, and it's going and going. Oh wow, that's gonna be a home run. Yeah, so a walk-off grand slam for him. So always love going to Wrigley. It's beautiful. Wrigley's constantly getting updated. I noticed they have an upper level concourse now, which they didn't have a few years ago. It used to be, if you're sitting in the upper deck and you had to go to the bathroom, you had to walk all the way down all the scissor ramps to the lower level, and that's where all the bathrooms and food and everything was. Now there's Now there's bathrooms and concessions and, walkways and tables and stuff on the upper level, which every modern stadium has. So that was nice. The Cubs ownership's doing a really good job, like modernizing the 105-year-old Wrigley Field. It's a great place to watch a ball game, and it's much nicer than it has been with modern amenities.
Excellent.
Yeah. So got to ride some roller coasters at Six Flags Great Adventure on Sunday, and then after that I watched on Zoom Sean's wedding. So congratulations again to him and Julia. Hope you two had a good time, even though I didn't really see you at the wedding. I guess you were.
We were there.
Yeah, the
We
Zoom
were there.
cut off. Yeah.
Yes, we were there for before, during, and after for a lot of fun times and some annoying times, but that wasn't anybody that was getting married's fault.
Annoying time.
Yeah,
Um,
that's for another time.
yeah, we'll discuss that off the record.
Yeah.
That's for post-pod.
Yes. So we'll move on to some other topics before we hit the NFL, where we've got one late ad by Corey. We'll get to that in a little bit. So we'll start with Naomi Osaka and the fallout of her refusal to speak to the media. Osaka had mentioned that she gets very anxious when speaking in front of the world press, basically, because you're not just talking to America, you're talking to the entire world. Everybody's watching the French Open from all 6 continents. Maybe even some people in Antarctica are tuning in too, so maybe it's all 7. But she was fined for this, and to be frank, I don't really take a huge issue with nominal fines for not making media appearances, because I understand the media is a big part of what drives the sport. But it was when they
basically threatened to eliminate her from the tournament.
Yeah, the
if
Women's
she didn't...
Tennis Association escalated this, and they brought this to a point where they said, if you don't appear in front of the media, we're going to kick you out of the tournament. Whereas if they had just said, okay, we'll nick you $10,000. Naomi Osaka is a very well-off tennis player. She's very successful. She could easily pay, $40,000-$50,000 worth of fines in total if she wanted to or had to, and it didn't have to be anything more than that. And what they honestly should have done, beyond just fining her, is finding a way to make this work, given the fact that she's one of their biggest stars, and finding a way to try to make her more comfortable and compromising and meeting her halfway. Instead, they decided to say, hey, screw you, we're bigger than you. And you're not. I'm sorry to tell you this, random French people, you're not bigger than the number 2 player in the world, who is an up-and-coming all-time great. Sorry, ain't gonna happen ever. And I will say this for sure, they wouldn't have done this to Rafael Nadal.
No,
they absolutely would not have done this to him.
I'm more or less with you on if they wanted to fine her, I would prefer for them to be more proactive.
I agree.
As you said at the end, and try and find a way to make this work. Try and make her more comfortable. We're getting to a point in our society where we are becoming more aware of mental health struggles. And that can range from serious mental health issues to things that seem as benign as depression and becoming anxious. And we're starting to understand that even those things that we generally treat as benign can still be very taxing to deal with. And just because somebody is a famous, talented athlete who has a lot of money and, we would assume access to, therapies and people to help, granted, we also have to consider that athletes at that level have to dedicate so much time to their craft that how much time do they realistically have to focus on their mental health while still maintaining that level of eliteness in their sport? You have to think about all of that. And, for people like us, it's easy to forget aspects of the day-to-day life of a professional athlete and what it takes to maintain that level of success. We really need to, as a society, become even more aware than we have and become more sympathetic and empathetic toward these mental health issues that people are facing. And I agree. Yes, part of the job is to promote yourself and promote the sport that you're a part of. And when you are that good of an athlete, your word goes a lot longer than the 27th ranked person in the world. Nobody's tuning in to their press conference to hear what they have to say. But at the same time, hey, French Open, nobody is watching your tournament for the number 27 ranked person. If I'm tuning into one of the women's matches, it's because either Serena or Naomi are playing. I'm not tuning in for anybody else, really. It's just like on the men's side. Yeah, there are people who will watch any match, but I'm not tuning in unless it's Federer or Djokovic. Maybe Nadal, but even then, probably not unless he's playing one of those other two. For the casual fan, that's the person that you want to have in your tournament, that you need to have in your tournament, and to threaten to default them is ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I think that it's another case where certain individuals build up resentment for those that are better than them. And this is one of those cases where I bet every person that works the French Open probably wishes they could win the French Open.
Oh,
and they can't because they are not special. They're not talented. They're not good. They're just people. And Naomi Osaka is more than just a person. She's an extraordinary person. She's a tremendous tennis talent. And to not have her participating at your event that only comes around once a year, you've got 2 weeks to showcase not just your facilities and whatnot, but also your city and your country, because it's named after France. Like, this is sort of their big event when it comes to international sports every year. And they straight up basically said, nah, it's more about us than it is about the players that make it happen, which, again, just comes purely from resentment. It's all just envy at this point.
It's also worth mentioning that, some of the takes from not just the world media, but from American media in particular, that are kind of trying to throw Osaka under the bus in all of this. And, I saw today someone tweeted an old interview of Venus Williams back when she was 14. And there was a reporter who was doing an interview with her, and she was answering his questions with, supreme confidence. She's going to beat her upcoming opponent. She's going to win these tournaments. She's going to be a great player. And he just keeps coming back to, you're saying that so confidently. How are you being so confident? Why are you being so confident? And finally, Venus Williams' dad jumped in and was like, dude, you're dealing with a kid and a young black girl at that. Why do you have to keep pointing out, that she's being confident to the point that it's very clear that what you're saying is you're being arrogant?
Yeah, again,
that's not what she's being.
And again, this is 100% what we talked about earlier, where there's no benefit of the doubt anymore when people behave like this. We know what you're doing. You're not fooling anybody. You can't play it off. This is definitely, race is a factor in that. And also, sex is a factor. Gender is a factor in it as well.
Absolutely.
I mean, the idea that people feel confronted when women refuse to maintain the status quo. When they say, you know what, I'm not comfortable doing this. I've got mental health limitations that hold me back from being able to do this without causing myself undue stress. So I'm going to respectfully decline this. And they freak out because it's like, how could you possibly defy us? As if they're entitled to her doing whatever they want because she's a woman and they're men.
Yeah. I have a perspective on this, I guess. I've suffered from anxiety my whole life, basically. And, I can relate. Hopefully Naomi Osaka can, get the help that she needs. Cause I feel like you have a problem when you can't function at your job, whatever your job is, whether it be engineering or playing professional tennis. So if she feels like she needs to step away, then I think that's a good thing. Because some days you just can't go and you can't deal with whatever it is. And hopefully she gets it worked out. I don't disagree with any of the other stuff y'all said about race and gender being a factor, because it certainly is. I was disappointed, I guess, just because I just found out. I didn't know that the Women's Tennis Association escalated the situation by threatening to kick her out of the tournament. I feel like, fining her whatever the nominal fine was for not speaking to the media. I mean, I think that's appropriate.
Yeah.
Right?
It's definitely sufficient. So you don't need to go beyond that.
No.
Yeah, like when you're a professional athlete, you have to talk to the media. That's the job. And when you don't do that, you should be punished whatever is appropriate. But the Tennis Association threatening to kick her out of the tournament for this, I think there's no excuse for that. Like, who made that decision, and why haven't they been fired yet? That's absurd to me. Like, you made a mountain out of a molehill completely. Your decision making has made the entire situation worse. It just completely blew up. This was such a little deal before, and now it's a whole thing. But the bottom line is, I hope Naomi Osaka is doing well, despite all this nonsense.
100% agree. We'll move on to breaking news today. Mike Krzyzewski says he will retire at the end of next college basketball season. So that will end, 40 years of his tenure at Duke? Probably, maybe
something like that.
Maybe a little longer than that.
I think it may be more than that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know when he started there, but it was a long, long time ago. He's been a staple in college basketball for a long time. A controversial figure because he's great, but he's also the guy that coaches Duke, and Duke has earned a reputation of being great and being really, really annoying, and a team that always has a bunch of jerks on them. And that kind of changed a little bit in the last 10 years or so as Coach K decided to be more involved in recruiting one-and-dones and different types of players. But it's still, that reputation is never going to go away. Like the fact that he coached Bobby Hurley and Christian Laettner and Grayson Allen and Kyle Singler and Greg Paulus and John Shire, who was supposedly the heir apparent for his job when Coach K hangs it up next year. But
J.J. Redick, who I'd never liked.
Yeah, J.J. Redick's interesting because
Mike Dunleavy.
Yeah, Mike Dunleavy. Oh
Mike Dunleavy.
The worst. The worst. Oh my God.
Him or Grayson Allen.
Actually, Grayson Allen's worse, but Dunleavy was a figment of my childhood too.
He was such a crybaby.
Yeah, like Grayson Allen was. I was kind of over Duke at that point because Maryland was no longer the ACC. But
Dunleavy was, oh my God.
Yeah, oh my God, the worst. Like the thing about J.J. Redick is he was like one of the only guys like that. I'll say it.
After college, you kind of like,
yeah,
JJ like him now.
JJ Redick's a cool guy.
Yeah.
Like those other guys were just as douchey as you assumed. Yeah. And they were, and again, they were white guys. I'm not gonna sit there and pretend like, that wasn't a factor here. And it's not like all the black dudes were just like dudes you rooted for all the time too. I mean, Jay Williams was a cocky bastard too. Yeah. And I hated him.
Yeah, same with Battier.
Yeah, and Chris
Shane
Duhon.
Battier.
Yeah, Chris Duhon and Carlos Boozer. I mean, all those guys they were obnoxious and they were hateable. And Coach K's obnoxious.
What about Kyrie Irving for his cup of coffee?
He was there for 11 games, and he's a whole other
Quinn
host
Cook?
of issues. Your boy, my boy. I love Quinn Cook.
Our boy.
But again, that sort of falls into the later timeline
Yeah.
where it was a whole bunch of future NBA players that actually were good in the NBA.
Yep.
Again, exception for J.J. Redick, who's still playing in the NBA, even though he's been in the league probably 15 years now. But
There's a podcast.
Shane Battier had a good NBA career.
I still don't
did
like
too.
Shane Battier.
And Carlos Boozer
my
did
God.
too.
Yeah.
He made some All-Star games, but I think that it's going to be weird seeing Duke basketball not have Coach K being on the sidelines because
it's gonna be
again he's been there for my whole life and just about everybody else.
Be there? They're gonna look so out of place.
I mean, John.
Who was the coach before him? Who was that guy?
Who knows?
No idea. No earthly idea.
Whoever the next guy is, like, he's gonna be turned away at the door at the start of the season. Be like, who the hell are you?
Yeah. So I'm not gonna sit here and give Coach K any shout outs because I still don't like him and never will. But we just felt like we should acknowledge that he's retiring and he's an all-time great.
Yeah, I mean it's
what
big news. This is
he's a legend.
Probably the biggest retirement news you'll ever see in college basketball. I mean, I know
Certainly
Roy Williams.
Point, yeah. Roy Williams is a big deal, but
like
Coach K is a staple.
This completely dwarfs that.
Well, and the thing with Roy Williams is, he had a long tenure at North Carolina, but he moved around a lot. He was at Kansas. Coach K is Duke basketball.
Yep.
Whereas North Carolina was already an established brand with Dean Smith.
Yep, absolutely.
So it was like Coach K is the guy. So it will be interesting to see what happens with Duke because they haven't been relevant at all outside of when Coach K was the coach, which is for the last 4 decades
years,
plus.
I think. Yeah.
So I mean, I'm interested to see how it goes. Like I said, John Shire, who's a former player, is the heir apparent supposedly, and we'll see what he's able to do. I'm sure a lot of people, especially in College Park, would love that because the Shire face became a classic meme because he was a notorious face maker. When he would try to do anything on the basketball court, he would contort his face to make it look like he was being fouled because, of course, he went to Duke. So
my parents are listening, and they said 41 years, they think. But they also asked, is it official? And, I mean, obviously he could potentially change his mind, but he has officially announced his intention to retire at the end of next season.
All right, well, we'll see if it sticks. If it does, well, sayonara, Coach K, sometime next April or March, hopefully. Because if it's April, that means they're probably going to win the title.
Yeah,
nobody needs that. Nobody needs that.
Oh yeah, no, not again. I mean, Coach K.
It was nice watching March Madness without Duke this year. Sorry, Rashonda.
Yeah, I did not miss that.
Coach K, you lost to Georgia Tech this year. Okay, that's
damning.
I mean, yeah, you probably should have been fired for that. To be honest,
tough year, man.
I think lose to Georgia Tech. Enough leeway to survive that loss.
I mean,
he had lost to Georgia Tech since 2010.
I mean, it's like losing to Kansas in football. It's usually a death knell for your career.
Yeah, you can just forget it. It's over. Okay. Lose to Georgia Tech. You're done.
Speaking of Georgia Tech.
Yeah, we'll get to some college baseball because Evan's excited. I haven't kept up with Maryland baseball this year. I don't know what they're doing, which is a
Maryland
shame.
baseball is ranked.
Yeah, I know they're good, but I'm not really sure where they are, who they're playing. But you are into Georgia Tech, so tell us what's coming up for them, Evan.
Yeah, so we were the number 3 seed in the ACC tournament. I talked about this last week, and how the tournament worked. And all we had to do was win one game, and we would advance to the semifinal. We lost to Clemson in the first game, and we needed 12 innings and a comeback in the 12th inning with 2 outs to get by Louisville in the ACC tournament, and then we were unceremoniously bounced by NC State in the semifinal. So that wasn't great. So starting on Friday, we are in the Nashville Regional. We're the number 2 seed, along with number 1 Vanderbilt, who is loaded, and Indiana State at 3, and Presbyterian 4th. In that that'll start on Friday. So, oh boy. It just brings up bad memories of 2 years ago when Tech was hosting the regional with Auburn and Florida A&M and Coastal Carolina, and we figured out how to give up a walk-off home run in our own stadium to Auburn.
So does just one team get out of that Nashville regional, or would 2 teams get through?
Just one.
So you guys have to get past Vanderbilt as well as those other 2.
The way it works is it's double elimination. So Vandy starts off playing Presbyterian, and we start off against Indiana State, and everybody plays everybody, and
until 2 teams have lost 2 games.
Till 3 teams have
lost 2 games, right?
Yeah. So if you lose 2 games, you're out. So it could go as long as until Monday.
Oh wow, okay, that makes sense.
if two of the teams have, only one loss, like they play each other for a third time, essentially. So we have to beat Vanderbilt, who have Al Leiter's son or nephew, I think, and then Kumar Rocker.
They've got Kumar Rocker too. So
I think a couple of DeMatha guys are at Vanderbilt as well.
Playing baseball.
I think Jack Bulger might be at Vanderbilt.
Okay.
Oh, well, I might have to be rooting against him this week. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Evan. I kind of hope you have to face Kumar Rocker because he's incredible, and I want to watch him.
We're probably gonna face Kumar Rocker, yeah. He might throw a no-hitter or something. But good luck to the Yellow Jackets in the Nashville Regional.
Yeah, good luck to them.
Yes, indeed. So before we get to our one football topic, we got to talk about the horsies a little bit. Medina Spirit, the Kentucky Derby participant now disqualified, former winner, was stripped of his Derby win. $1.86 million of winnings has been returned, and Bob Baffert has been canceled by the woke mob at Churchill Downs. No comment on whether he appeared on Fox News to complain about it.
I'm sure he has or will.
But anyway, second positive test, or was it second, or they just confirmed the first one? Whatever.
They confirmed the first one.
The point is, bottom line is, horse cheated. Bob Baffert cheated. Bob Baffert cheats all the time.
Well, the horse didn't cheat.
Well, the horse was an unwitting party to the cheating, but ultimately the engine for it, which is unfortunate. It's not the horse's fault. But this is hilarious because Bob Baffert acted like a complete buffoon. And every time I see him on TV, I'm always like, oh, it's that guy again. And I didn't really have any reason to dislike him other than the fact that he's, a rich guy that is very cocky and always wins the horse races. But now he's a cheater. So, excellent. I get to hate this guy. It's great. I love it. So, sucks for you, nerd. Try again next year. Oh, wait, you can't. How about the year after? Oh, wait, you can't. So, maybe we'll see you in 2024. Hopefully not. So anyway, Mandaloun named 2021 Kentucky Derby winner. That kind of sucks though, because did Mandaloun compete at the Preakness?
I don't think so.
See, that's that kind of.
Yeah.
Anyway, Belmont Stakes takes place this Saturday on June the 5th. Post time is at 6:49 on NBC. Tune in to watch the horses run some more, but we obviously aren't going to have a Triple Crown winner at this point. But that's been the case for the most part for the last 40 years. We were spoiled to see it happen twice in the span of 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
2015, 2018, I think, were the 2 years that it happened recently. So it could easily be another 3 decades, so can't really expect it. That's all we've got, unless any of you other horse racing aficionados want to chime in about...
That'd be Evan, if we have anything.
No, I don't know that I'll be able to watch. I got another busy weekend coming up, so I'll try to tune in on the phone or something. But
we're probably playing our final mission of Imperial Assault this weekend, and it could be a long one, so I might not be able to tune in either.
What is that?
It's
a Star Wars based game.
It's a tabletop board game, turn-based RPG style. It's based on Star Wars. Yeah, it's fun.
Oh. And you called Bob Baffert a nerd.
Well, I was calling him a nerd because, being facetious, I'm willing to accept my status as a nerd. But I am not a cheater. I am not a crook. Like Nixon, right? Wink, wink, nod, nod.
There you go.
So we'll get to the NFL now. One topic to discuss, like I've said twice. Corey put something here that says, race norming to end in concussion cases. Race norming having something to do with presuming normality of somebody's brain based off of perhaps a white,
this is not something that should affect current players, but this is something that in some of these lawsuits and other settlement cases involving former players from before concussion testing became more prevalent, and we started taking baseline readings of players in order to make sure that we clear them for activity after they have returned to that to their normal brain activity status when they're returning from a concussion. for players from before that era, the NFL for a long time has engaged in a practice called race norming, which essentially was predicated on the assumption that black players start out with lower cognitive functioning than white players do, which means that a former black player who is suing the league for damages to their brain from their time in the league, if they undergo a test, then their cognitive function has to be way lower than a white former players in order to actually qualify for a settlement with the NFL, because they supposedly started at a lower level of cognitive function. So
did you accidentally read an Onion article? This sounds so crazy.
Doesn't it?
Was this 1852? What are we doing here?
So this has been something that has been discussed for a number of years, ever since a lot of these cases started coming out about former players dealing with symptoms of brain damage. But the NFL has largely tried to downplay the effects of the game on brain function, right? They finally have started to stop doing that. But they've also tried to downplay this practice of race norming. And so they have finally essentially admitted it by saying that they are pledging to halt the use of this practice.
Thanks for doing
Why?
the bare minimum. I mean,
Right.
like, so
I mean,
we pledge not to be violently racist. Okay, way to go, NFL.
So
Golf clap.
to kind of explain how this practice came into being, it started not with the NFL, but in medicine in general in the 90s. Basically,
In the 90s.
yeah, and it was meant to offer more appropriate treatment to dementia patients. The problem is, this practice was then used by the NFL to, in essence, make it more difficult for black players to qualify, and not have to pay out these settlements at as high a rate.
Unbelievable.
Okay, so they're claiming they were being racist by mistake instead of, on purpose for decades.
I don't know if they're necessarily claiming one or the other, but it's clear that they were definitely being racist one way or the other.
Yeah,
with this
For
practice.
decades.
There's no mistake about this.
No.
This was deliberate,
No.
like it usually is. So, fortunately, they've smartened up at the very least to stop doing that. At least we hope so. I mean,
Yeah,
The fact
at least
that it was
at least now they're saying they're. I mean,
The fact that it was
nobody
going on,
deserves
yeah.
credit for doing the bare minimum standard of basic human decency. Like that, you don't deserve any sort of award for that.
No.
Like that's just what you're supposed to do.
you certainly don't deserve credit for not doing the bare minimum for 30 years and then saying, "Well, we're going to stop being horrible." No, like that's not even the bare minimum. The bare minimum would have been not doing this in the first place. This is egregious, but I can't say I'm shocked either.
No.
I mean, just
Yeah.
this is the world we live in.
I mean, also like your skin color has nothing to do with really anything else about you.
Of course not.
Like, like if people didn't have skin somehow, like everybody would be all pinkish and squishy and stuff. So,
That's true.
you know what that.
Thank you for that.
Thank you
Evan.
for that visual.
Well, I'm telling you that's how that works. Okay.
You're not wrong.
I've taken biology. I get it.
Yeah. So, but my skin color doesn't really say anything about who I am internally. It only tells somebody what my parents might look like. That's really about it. So like determining somebody's brain function, what their normal brain function level might have been based on their skin color is comically absurd. That's why I asked Corey if this was an Onion article. This sounds so ridiculous. Like,
Sounds too ridiculous
What?
for the Onion. It sounds more like a Babylon Bee article.
yeah, like
Babylon
this
Bee would be
can't
celebrating
possibly be
this.
real.
That's true, they would.
And like I'm starting to feel bad for the people who write the Onion because like it's got to be so hard to come up with fake stories because the real stories are so insane that it's
Fake stories are
unbelievable.
becoming more believable than the real stories.
Right.
It's sad.
It's
Yeah.
very sad.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So, good for the NFL for doing the right thing, like once. And thank you, NFL, for not claiming you're protecting player safety when you're not, because, we know that's ridiculous too.
So, quick update on the Wizards and the Sixers who are playing right now. It's late in the first quarter. The Wizards are currently up 27-22. Before we get out of here, we've got some scheduling announcements, I guess, to make. Now, next week, it'll probably start the week after that because next week, Monday is my birthday. So we'll probably do the show on Tuesday if you guys are cool with that. Because I can make availability for that. But anyway, Corey and I are playing softball on Wednesdays this summer. So for at least up until football season, perhaps, we're going to start doing our shows on Monday. Our first Monday show will be on the 14th. And we will probably maintain that schedule through June, July, and August while we play softball on Wednesdays. And then we'll definitely try to get back to a midweek show, preferably on Wednesdays when football season gets up and running. Monday shows for football season would suck. Monday Night Football right on there.
Monday Night
Yeah,
Football.
that would be a pain in the ass. So
The Ravens open on Monday Night Football. Like
Yeah.
I would refuse to do the podcast.
Evan would miss
Like,
his first
it's just-
show. Evan would.
Are you
His
kidding
perfect
me?
attendance record would be ruined if we did that. So we can't have that. But anyway, Mondays will be our podcast day starting the 14th. We will also be doing a Tuesday podcast next week, and then we'll update you as football season approaches. We'll probably get back to the Wednesday schedule at that point. Do you guys have any shout outs or whatevers?
Shout out to the. Oh, go ahead. Shout out to the Hyatt Regency O'Hare for hosting me for a nice stay. Everybody's friendly and the hotel room was clean and a great view and stuff. So, shout out to the Hyatt Regency O'Hare, even though nobody listens to this show anyway, and certainly, make it to this point. If your business would like to sponsor, please do so.
Hey, we are definitely open for sponsorships.
Mm-hmm.
One more shout out to Sean and Julia Kennedy. They've been married for 3 days. Very happy for them. They picked a gorgeous venue. It was such a fun weekend to be able to spend with them and each other and just live it up and celebrate the two of them. We're really happy for them.
Yeah, the wedding was awesome. The venue was great. Sean and Julia were excellent hosts, if you will, given that it was their show, but they were as accommodating as possible, and they really made sure it came off well for everybody, not just them. So
appreciated the importance placed on being vaccinated, and everybody was vaccinated and got a COVID test the week of.
Yep.
Just to make sure we were all safe. So it was really nice to be able to be there and be mask free for certain parts of the weekend and not have to feel like, man, I wonder.
Yeah, and shout out to Sean again for bailing me out because my tuxedo shirt was not part of the package apparently when I got it dry cleaned. But Sean fortunately had a white button-up shirt that he had worn previously that he allowed me to wear, and I mostly looked like I had the right gear on, which was good enough for me.
You could have worn the tuxedo T-shirt I was wearing.
Yeah, that wouldn't have looked right. That would have been
and
tough.
Sweatpants.
No, we had blue suits on. So.
Yeah, blue suits and white shirts
Vests.
on, so a black tuxedo shirt would have been
especially
hilarious.
short sleeved.
By the way, great call, Sean, on the suits. They looked amazing.
those were fire.
I felt so good in that suit. I love a vest. I love a good vest.
Vests are good. The suspenders were clutch, even though Corey was whining about them.
I really wasn't sure how I was going to feel about the suspenders. By the end of the night,
They were nice, dude. They really helped.
I'm a fan. I'm okay with the suspenders.
I felt loosey-goosey in those pants, man. It was great.
Loosey-goosey.
Yes, indeed. But that's enough about our personal lives and the fun we had this weekend. I hope everybody else had a fun Memorial Day weekend. Obviously, remembering why we celebrate Memorial Day for all the fallen soldiers that are a big part of the reason why we're able to do what we do today.
Yes.
But so on that note, we're going to try to get up out of here now. So thank you guys for tuning in. You can find us at all the podcast places, wherever you get them. You can also send us emails if you're feeling so bold. Give us some feedback, some show ideas, some questions in a mailbag. Whatever you want to do, we'll take it. Don't be too rude, but if you are, we'll have some fun with that too.
Yeah.
You can also follow us on Twitter. We are at SportsBallers18. You can follow each of us individually. Corey is at Corey Puffett. I am at Quagmire67, and Evan is at Evan_Ash13. So thank you guys for tuning in. We will see you next Tuesday. This has been episode 146 of the Sports Ballers podcast, and we are out of here. Take it easy.